Good evening and welcome to the evening news from the Hum. I'm your host David O'Reilly, and our top story: a significant escalation in conflict between the state and the people of a quiet Wicklow village. We witness incredible scenes from Newtownmountkennedy in an update with our reporter on the ground, Gearoid Kelly. 10 years of crisis, from the Maidan revolution to war in Ukraine. We go over to our international correspondent, Gearoid O'Colmáin, on the details of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And we observe the changing of the seasons as the weather warms up from spring to summer, and look forward to the weather for the weekend with Tara. Yesterday in Newtownmountkennedy, there was a series of confrontations between protesters protesting against the planned International Protection Centre and Gardaí. During the day, tensions grew and confrontations escalated.
Leave him alone!
Rumours circulated amongst protesters that the 160 migrant men might be en route. A large number of members of the riot squad were deployed to the village.
Tell the women to come up front! Women up the front! Come
Garda public order units charged and pepper sprayed the crowd, causing injuries. Protesters started a fire adjacent to the property and overturned barriers. Now our reporter Gearoid Kelly talks to locals about last night's events.
I'm here in Newtownmountkennedy, just up the road from Trudder House, where locals have been protesting over the last 6 or 7 weeks. But last night, things took a turn for the worst when the riot squad was called. So I'm here with one of the protesters, Mags. So Mags, can you tell me in your own words exactly what happened here last night?
Well, I feel it was an escalation over the last couple of days. We'd been contacted by the Chief Inspector in Bray, and he told us that the developer wanted to have a meeting with us. So we thought this was great news, because we thought our legal battle is taking a good turn, and we thought, like, maybe they don't know what to do, and they're going to. But it turned out to be a big fat lie, because we'd organised a meeting for the coming Monday, and it turns out 2 days after that, the riot squad arrived, and they facilitated all the trucks to come in. The work to begin. There's now a marquee, all the tents are set up. So we were absolutely, lied to, thrown under the bus, I would like to say. So, people were annoyed, obviously, at this happening, because we kind of let our guard down a little. So we were kind of on the back foot, and they just came. They were using their pepper spray like air freshener. I'm glad they don't have guns. They were absolutely just angry, and they were like wild animals, pushing people over, old people, women, just charging at them, grabbing them, really hurting them. There's blood, bruises, cuts. I've seen it all. It was actually horrific. Yeah.
And you and many of the locals were protesting just down the road here, directly outside of Trutter House. Now the barricade has been moved up the road, but last night they had it all the way up to the end of this road, right to the roundabout, right into the village, and they actually entered some housing estates. Were you there for that? If you were, what did you witness last night?
So yeah, I had gotten around to the corner because I was stuck down the other end, and we weren't allowed up this way, obviously. So I'd gotten a lift around to that way because I thought I could come and get my car. But that wasn't going to happen. And then next thing I know, they're barging out with their shields, screaming, running down the road, knocking people over. And apparently then they went down to the end of the road and into the housing estate and pepper spraying people in their gardens, I believe. Absolutely horrific bully boy tactics. And when I came this morning then to get my car, I was escorted down. It was a little further down the lane. I was escorted down by a guard who wasn't happy with me at all. We weren't happy with each other. And I got into my car, and I didn't trust the way he was hovering over my window. And I turned on my engine, and I got my phone, and I wanted to get to my camera because I was scared. And he screamed at me, "Put the phone away because you're not allowed to have your phone when your engine is on." So I said, "Don't worry, I'm putting it down." And I put my phone down on the passenger seat beside me while it was recording. And he proceeded to get his elbow and forcefully try to knock my wing mirror off. And he bent it all the way backwards. So I was obviously terrified, but I was getting out to see if it was okay, because in my head I'm thinking I can't drive with a broken wing mirror, or I'm breaking the law. Not that there wasn't plenty of laws broken last night with trucks driving in with no plates, illegal plates, false plates. Several of them, people with balaclavas. Everything was just so underhanded, shady, and sinister. It was actually terrifying.
Just go back to that again. So you're saying that last night people people showed up here with balaclavas, and the guards were facilitated this. Is that true?
Absolutely, absolutely. All the workers that went in had complete face covered, just eyes, hoods up. Some of them had glasses. Some of the guards, even when they attacked an old man with a walking stick, one of the guards had her face completely covered, while they did that. It was just so surreal. It was hard to believe it was happening.
Now, these were shocking scenes. I've talked to some of the other protesters here, and they said that the Gardaí and the raid squad escalated the situation, and basically caused this. How did this whole situation make you feel?
I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. I was staying out of it, I was staying back, but my body was trembling. I was terrified. I went behind the camp into a field, and I was afraid that cables were going to burn. I was afraid they were just trampling over innocent people. One man got his ribs broken while he was on the ground, while they trampled him, pepper sprayed him. There was a journalist who also got pepper sprayed, who was trying to tell them to stop because he was on the ground. It was just horrific. It was terrifying.
Now, how do you see, you're locked out of the protest site, okay? So the guards have taken control of that now. So it looks like now that they have control, that work will probably start going ahead on this building to move these 160 male migrants into the town, into the village. So, I mean, going forward as protesters, do you have any plans about how you're going to continue your protest, or are you going to continue your protest?
Well, I'm not sure about plans, but I just feel our village won't be the same. Everybody is going to be on high alert. There's a GAA pitch here behind us, and all the mothers, the grannies who have been peacefully protesting with us have said, that's all going to that's all going to change. Kids won't be allowed to walk there. They won't be allowed to call to their friends. It's going to take away so much from everybody here. Personally, I feel life is just not going to be the same again. We've all heard the horror stories, which are never on the news, but we've heard them, especially up here, from the people who that would be their reason for being here. My own reason for being here was because of fear, and fear for my children, fear for myself. I used to love this. It's a lovely loop to walk you know, and I don't think I would ever do that again, even with a crowd, you know. So it's just changed everything.
Yeah. So I'm here with Damien Shannon, one of the protesters who was here when the raid squad arrived last night. So Damien, can you tell me exactly what happened here last night?
Yeah, I was down supporting the people down there, and the police came with the riot police came and they started shoving the people forward. Now I was on the sideline, but I was seeing people getting shoved forward. There was a lot of pushing going on. A few people fell to the ground. They got pepper sprayed in the face first. Then the people didn't know where they were going. They couldn't see. They fell to the ground. I seen an elderly woman bending down. Now I don't know if she was pepper sprayed. I don't think she was at this stage. But I went in to assist her and help her to get out of the situation because she was going to get trampled on, basically. So I went in, I helped her, I pushed her away in. I had to push her away in, force her away in. So I helped her get up and I pulled her to one side. And then as I turned around to my right hand side, I got pepper sprayed across the eyes, the nose, the mouth. And then I couldn't see where I was going. So a couple of friends come over, my partner come over, and she pulled me to the side, and people got water to my eyes and stuff like that for a good 20 minutes. That went on. So eventually I moved from that area down closer to the housing estates down here. I was talking to a few people down there later on that night, and the police riot came down the road marching. 2 vans pulled up, and more police riot got out. They marched everyone down to the house. Like, people were standing out in the doorways. They were telling people to get into their houses, get into the house. And that's wrong, because them people that bought them houses, they paid a lot of money for them houses, and they were treated like dirt. Get in, and while this was going on, there was people being pushed to the ground. Older people in their 60s, in their 70s, are pushed to the ground. They pushed them to the ground. They walked over them. People tried to help them. They wouldn't let. And anyone that had cars parked, they couldn't go back and get their cars. I had to go back out later on to pick up some people because they got stranded because they weren't allowed back to the cars. And a lot of different stuff happened, you know.
And were you actually up in the housing estate? Did you witness what happened up there?
I did, yes. They came down from all angles. And they just said, they kept shouting forward, 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 keep the line, keep the line. As I said, they were pushing people, just coming up that they weren't in the protest. They just had a look what was going on. They pushed them out of the way. The people fell to the ground, and people were screaming and getting upset because they tried to help that person, but they wouldn't even let people in to help them. And they were telling people, as I said, get into your house, get in, get back in.
You're directed on the Section 8 of public order.
We live here. We live here. We live here. We live here. We live here.
Go! Move back from here now. Coward.
You're the coward.
Move. Fuck you, you fucking cunt. You're cunt.
You. Oh, my fucking eyes. Ah!
Get back in. I was standing down at the end of the road, so I got into my own car and got out of there because I didn't want to be stranded either, because I actually don't live down in the town. I live up the road here. So I left then, you know.
And now, just after this dramatic incident last night, how does this all make you feel?
I have no respect for the Gardaí, which I did have respect for all my life. I seem to, from now on, I've less respect for the Gardaí because the way they treat people, like we're the criminals. We're not the criminals. We're just standing for our rights. It's not illegal to stand up to protest, you know. So I was a standby that tried to assist an older woman out of the situation, and just pepper sprayed me. And I did get a few digs in the back as well, but I don't know who done that. It was the Gardaí, obviously, but I just couldn't point them out, you know, because it was black dark, like, you know. So I don't know what to say about them after that.
And just then, what's the general mood, you think, of the people of Newtownmountkennedy after this very upsetting incident last night?
The people are very sour, like, physically. A lot of people are very sour from the process because a lot of people a good lot of my friends got injured last night. 2 friends of mine, 3 friends ended up in hospital last night because they're just protesting. And a lot of people in Newtown, they're still angry, but they're angry with the planning that's going ahead here. These migrants or whatever coming into the area, and they're just putting up buildings for them everywhere, and no one has no say. The local people can't get up and into their own houses. They're getting blocked out. They're told they have to prove their identification going into their own house. It's just crazy stuff.
Gearoid, we've seen a significant escalation in the conflict between the state and people there. What have you observed going around Newtownmountkennedy?
Well, David, what I've observed is that the protesters are genuinely concerned local people. All of the protesters that I've met over my 2 visits to Newtownmountkennedy have all been local, living here for a very long time. They all have genuine concerns about moving 160 migrant men into their quite small village, or sorry, a large village or a small town, and I have not seen any antagonism towards the state or any or towards the Gardaí. I just think that what I have seen from the locals is that they are genuinely they love they're very proud of Newtownmountkennedy. That's one thing I've noticed. They're very proud of it, and they just want to keep the village or the town the way it was, which is a safe and a beautiful place to live.
Does it appear that the state has crossed the line in their heavy-handed approach to the protest last night?
It appears so. They called a riot squad, and I am told that there was about 300 protesters here last night, and so that those numbers obviously scared the authorities, and so they ordered in the riot squad, and with that amount of people protesting and then the riot squad showing up on a narrow country road, I think that what happened was that tempers flared, and the situation was escalated quite quickly by the presence of the riot squad. I do not think that the locals, I do not think that they wanted this kind of antagonistic conflict, but I think that they were forced by the riot squad to respond, and so some of them responded by lighting a fire and throwing stones, which is not ideal behaviour, but given the tense situation, it's certainly somewhat understandable.
And today, Gearoid, in the aftermath of all the chaotic scenes of last night, what is your impression of the feeling, the shock of the people in the local area?
Well, I think that the people are quite tired, because last night was very draining. A number of them were arrested, taken to Bray Garda station. Many other people were taken to the hospital for small injuries, or relatively minor injuries. So, and I think people are they're just today they're just resting. They're still about a dozen people here at the protest site, but obviously they moved away from the main protest site, so they're just outside of the Garda barricade. And I don't think that the people of Newtownmountkennedy are going to give up anytime soon. I just think that they're going to take stock and probably keep the protest, I imagine, will continue.
Thanks for that, Gearoid. We'll certainly follow this story with you over the coming weeks.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Now we delve into the origins and ongoing developments of the Ukrainian crisis. The Ukrainian crisis originated with the 2013-14 Maidan Revolution, where widespread protests erupted against President Viktor Yanukovych after his sudden decision to reject an EU association agreement in favour of closer ties with Russia. The demonstrations escalated into a full-blown conflict, culminating in Yanukovych's ousting. In response, Russia annexed Crimea in 2014, citing the protection of Russian interests and populations. This move was internationally condemned as illegal. The crisis deepened as pro-Russian separatists, with Moscow's support, seized parts of eastern Ukraine, leading to an ongoing conflict. The situation has significantly strained Ukraine's relations with Russia and drawn extensive international involvement, including sanctions against Russia. We now go to our foreign correspondent, Gearoid O'Colmáin, to discuss the origins of this crisis and recent attempts to bring peace. Ireland has taken in thousands of Ukrainian immigrants, yet the reasons for the war remain unclear. What exactly happened in Ukraine, and is there any prospect of a peaceful settlement to the war there, Gearoid?
Well, there was a coup in Ukraine in 2014 when you had these so-called Maidan protests. And the Maidan protests were essentially organized by the US Embassy, by US NGOs, and the purpose of the protest movement was to overthrow the government there and replace it with a pro-NATO, pro-European Union, and pro-US regime, which they succeeded in doing. One of the methods used for the overthrowing the regime was bringing in snipers who opened fire on police and protesters. Those snipers are suspected to have been trained in Georgia by the CIA. The operation basically destroyed the country. It erupted into chaos, divided into pro-West and pro-East. The pro-East are Russian speakers in the Donbass and Lugansk regions in particular. They began to be persecuted by the new pro-US regime. One of the major massacres there was the Odessa massacre in 2014, when the pro-Western protesters set fire to the workers' union headquarters in Odessa, burning people alive, and the entire building was burnt down. Pregnant women were burnt alive. There was nothing in the Western press about it, of course, nothing in, no denunciation. And these kind of atrocities have been committed across the board since then. I would say atrocities have been probably committed on all sides, but only one side of the story has been shown in the Western press, and that story is the pro-Ukraine junta side. Since then, the presidents have changed. So Poroshenko was the first major US-nominated president of the post-coup Ukraine, and the second major figure here, of course, is Zelensky. Ubiquitous Zelensky, who is a Jewish comedian. He was a major comedian in Ukraine before being nominated as president. And this is essentially what we're looking at here, I think, is a sort of post-politics whereby you have a comedian playing the role of a president. And he's a sort of a postmodern Che Guevara. He goes around in military attire around the world preaching, and he has sort of become this sort of ubiquitous, almost big daddy or big brother rather figure. You know, he sort of appears at big screens at all kinds of events, moralizing and so on. He's a cocaine addict. He's usually high on cocaine. It's very visible from all of his media performances. After all, he is an actor, and he's continued his career now as the acting president of this of Ukraine. You know, the deeper picture here, when we look at prospects for peace, the deeper picture here needs to sort of be analyzed. Zelensky is Jewish. It's important because the oligarch who basically financed his career, his name is Ihor Kolomoisky. And Ihor Kolomoisky is the billionaire who's the second richest man in Ukraine. Now he set up many important institutions, media companies, and so on. But his most important project was the European Jewish Parliament. He set that up with Vadim Rabinovich, another extremely wealthy Ukrainian Jew. And they set that parliament up in 2011. Now, so that's essentially a parliament, a European parliament for the Jews. And this parliament has now sort of taken over Jewish lobbying at the European Union level. Now, the interesting thing about this is that these two oligarchs are on different sides of the war on Ukraine. So Rabinovich is pro-Russian, and Kolomoisky is the man who created the current president Zelensky. Yet together in the European Union, they set up the European Union Parliament. So again, very few people even realize that that there is a European Jewish Parliament. Of course, it's an NGO. It's registered as an NGO, but it is an extremely powerful organization at a European level, lobbying for Jewish interests. So when it comes to Ukraine, the question of Israel comes up because of the ethnicity of the people involved here, Zelensky and so on. So that Israel is very much involved in this. The Mossad played a huge role in the coup in 2014, and the Israeli government has taken a neutral stance on the conflict. So this is something that's much deeper than people think. It is not just a geopolitical conflict between Russia and NATO, which is, on one level it is, but it's also, in a sense, very much linked to Israel. Ukraine had the highest number of Jews in Europe in the past. During the Soviet period, there was an attempt to create a Jewish state in Crimea, but that didn't happen. They created one in Azerbaijan instead. But it continues to be very, very important for the Israelis as a kind of an outpost of Israel. There are rumors even in the Middle East that Ukraine may become a kind of a Jewish state, it's a second Jewish state. Again, these is probably unlikely, but the point I'm making here is that when it comes to prospects for peace, it's difficult to see peace in the short term due to the fact that the country now has become the world center of child trafficking, world center of arms smuggling. One of the guys I just mentioned there, Rabinovich, set up the European Jewish Parliament. He was arrested, put in jail for in the Soviet Union for all kinds of crimes, money laundering, gun running. He was banned from the United States for those reasons as well. Kolomoisky is the same story, big time gangster. You know, this is kind of what we're talking about here when we look at Ukraine. It's much bigger than Ukraine, and it's not just a geopolitical conflict between NATO and Russia, but it's also very much linked to Israel and what's going on there. And that's an aspect of it that is really rarely discussed in any media.
Yes. Switzerland is set to host a high-level peace summit in mid-June. Is Switzerland's neutrality a factor in the decision to host talks there? And has Irish neutrality contributed in any way to developing a more balanced view of the conflict in Ukraine?
I think neutrality, it would be an extremely important thing in international relations. Certainly the fact that Israel, or the fact that Switzerland is at least nominally neutral, plays a role here. But I think the real reason for the peace talks in Switzerland is because the people who run Russia and Ukraine have bank accounts there, and Switzerland is, you know, is famous for its banks. And I think the Bank of International Settlements, of course, which is the most powerful bank in the world and is very much involved in global governance, is based in Switzerland. And I think that's probably the main reason for it. But I think to come to the question of neutrality in Ireland, Ireland could play a role, much bigger diplomatic role than it's ever played because of its neutrality, at least officially. But Ireland has never been neutral in this conflict. The Irish have been pro-NATO. NATO are very much responsible for the destabilization of Ukraine. There's no question about that. Russia's role there really is very much, from a geopolitical perspective, defensive. I already spoke about the deeper structures, however, that would call into question Russia's legitimacy, such as oligarchs in Ukraine who are pro-Russian, who are linked to Israel. There's an entire network there that's far more complex. So I'm not necessarily saying that there is a good side and a bad side here. I really don't think that's the case in Russia. But I think just looking at the facts about, first of all, who started the conflict, why there is a conflict there in the first place. The fairy tale we're told in the media is that this is about human rights and democracy and so on. And this doesn't help because it's nonsense. And I think if Ireland had at least a more neutral role, we would also hear the Russian point of view. They have a legitimate point of view, and it would enable people in Ireland to have a more balanced view of the conflict. It was completely unnecessary war in the first place. And the United States bears much of the responsibility for the destabilization of the country. And we never hear that, of course, in Irish media. So the Irish people are constantly being misinformed. So I think Ireland has obviously the Irish government has no intention of honouring our neutrality, because we've already become, in a sense, an extension of NATO. And certainly from the information war point of view, we are completely reproducing the pro-American point of view on this. And in every war there are two sides. There's always two sides, and you can't just describe a war as good guys versus bad guys. It's almost never the case. Wars are very complex. In this case, you have two huge blocs in confrontation with each other: NATO versus Russia. The Russian military industrial complex is certainly profiting from this war. Do they really want peace? A lot of money being made there with arms and the entire business of war, even from the Russian side. I would doubt very much their sincerity in this. But on the other hand, NATO wants to expand east, and they're not going to stop. So they want war as well. And the whole US military industrial complex, of course, profits from this. So again, these aspects of war, the fact that it's a business, that it's a racket, that it makes billions of dollars for very wealthy people who never participate in these wars, this is never discussed in the media. But the reality of these wars, of course, is that young people are sent to them to die. And right now we're talking about that increasingly in Europe, with people with conscription being discussed in the UK and in France. Will young European men be sent to Ukraine to die for a group of corrupt oligarchs? That's the question that most of the media should be asking. If they were free media, that's what we'd be hearing. But unfortunately, that's not what we're going to hear.
A very complex reality, and thanks for the details.
Good evening and welcome to the Weather with the Hum. I'm Tara and it's time for your weather forecast for today, tonight and tomorrow. Clouds will build this afternoon across Ireland, bringing widespread showers tracking southwards. Some of these showers may be heavy and accompanied by hail. Expect highest temperatures of 8 to 11 degrees Celsius with a light to moderate northeasterly breeze. As we move into tonight, showers will gradually die away early on, giving way to long, clear spells. It'll turn cold with lowest temperatures ranging from -1 to 3 degrees Celsius. Some patches of mist and fog may form, particularly in areas with light northerly breezes. Saturday will be a cool day with sunny spells starting off mainly dry, apart from isolated showers in the east and the northwest. However, as the day progresses, these showers will become more scattered, feeding in over the country. Expect highest temperatures of 9 to 12 degrees Celsius, mildest in the west, with a light to moderate northeasterly breeze. Any remaining showers will die out on Saturday night, leaving mainly dry and chilly conditions, with clear spells. Lowest temperatures will range from -1 to 3 degrees Celsius, with some grass frost forming in the coolest northern regions. And on to the national outlook, the final days of April will remain cool and unsettled, with showers or rain expected at times. Now, let's have a look at the last days of spring before turning to summer across the country. As we saw throughout this spring, we had a variety of weather conditions, and most recently, the sun has reared its head. We saw bluebells arrive and the livestock return to the pastures. This week, we found some droppings of a little creature of the woods. Could it be from an Irish pine marten? Pine marten in Irish is cut crean. So that wraps up your weather forecast for today, tonight and tomorrow. Stay tuned for any updates and have a fantastic weekend. Back to the studio.
And thanks, Tara. So, to round up our weekly news bulletin, we heard an update on the aftermath of clashes in Newtownmountkennedy from Gearoid Kelly as tensions boil over from government immigration policy. We had a report from our international correspondent, Gearoid O'Colmáin, on the causes of the Ukrainian conflict and the important influence of neutral countries in bringing peace to the region. We're ready for the seasonal changes from spring to summer as we looked at the weather for the upcoming weekend with Tara. I'm your host, David O'Reilly, wishing you all a great weekend, and we'll see you all again next week with The Hum. Gearoid O'Colmáin.